town you never heard of. Hey everybody, welcome to the Common Folk Podcast with Ben, Morgan, and Andy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Common Folk.
We're back. We're back at it.
We are back at it.
Normally, you're the one that's cracking these, so that was mine.
That was yours?
I couldn't wait.
Number 2.
I couldn't wait. I had to crack mine. Had to get it open.
All weekend. I don't know that we've
It's
stopped.
been a long weekend.
Whew.
And
We
this
had
is
Birgit.
far nice of you. Oh,
Yeah,
no.
we had Birgit down here this weekend. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Had his concert last night.
So much fun, you guys. Thanks for inviting us and letting us
Oh,
be
I'm
part
glad
of
you
it.
guys came.
That was great.
That opening music right there, that was from him.
He opened the concert with that song.
He did.
Yes,
Yeah.
he did.
Yep.
Yeah.
For
He's
sure.
a good one. Love his wife. She's great.
Yep.
Yeah, Amy.
Good folks.
And their friend.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. She's hilarious.
She's awesome. Yeah.
Yep. Good folks. So we, as a podcast, we've been busy the last few days. And we've had this particular one planned for a while. The idea of the podcast has been in the back of my mind for, I don't know, at
A
least
long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Months and months and months. And for folks who have been listening to us, they may remember my dad is a retired police officer. So I was talking to my dad about a couple of different things and ideas that I have and stuff that I wanted to talk about on the podcast and, give people exposure to and so on and so forth. And my dad made a suggestion that I don't know why I didn't think about. And that got us to where we are today. But this is most likely going to end up in a couple of parts. So I don't know that we'll have like a hard stop necessarily, but there'll be two pieces to this particular episode. But goal number one is that I wanted to talk to, and then I think we're going to do this with a few police officers. I want to talk to police officers about just who they are, where they came from, why they do what they do.
Yeah.
It's this whole humanizing the badge idea.
Okay.
I grew up in it, so it's not anything new to me. But I'm constantly surprised by the thoughts and feelings that people have about police officers, and the fact that they forget that these are
They're real people.
regular people.
Yeah.
There's a person
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do that with sports heroes too,
For
we
sure.
just forget
Yep.
about like,
Yeah.
it's a guy, dad passes away and then he has a bad game and we just torch him,
Yeah.
Yeah.
How could he only score 20 points?
Yeah.
Jesus, his dad just died,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one is a little unique, and we're going to get into the reasons why. It's not just some guy that we just met that
Some guy that pulled you over or anything.
right that we want to hear.
Hey, you want to be on our
no.
podcast?
Yeah, and that might happen. I mean, if I get pulled over, I'll ask him.
Oh, my God.
You know who I am.
But there's a lot more going on here, and we're going to get into it. But to begin with, I'd like to introduce a friend of mine, and we're going to get into the background and all the kinds of things. But Howard Banks, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yep. I think I'm going to enjoy this.
Yeah, for sure.
Have you done
100%.
anything like this before?
I've done a bunch of interviews,
Okay.
but never anything like
Podcast?
this.
No.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, so as a police officer, you probably have a fair amount of interaction with the press, and that's probably what you're referring to, like as far as interviews go and things like that.
Correct. I'm in charge of the media.
Okay.
So, yeah, I deal with the press daily, and, they want interviews at times, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
And do you know you know more about the department than me, but from what I remember as a kid, I think my dad held that role. I don't know if you've ever heard that or if you see any of the old stories.
Your dad was on TV a lot.
He was always on TV. He was the guy that was.
But was that a role? Like, was that a spot
and
then?
that's what Howard's talking about. Yeah.
But I know now, but I'm just saying, like, back then, not that it was 100 years ago or anything. We're not talking like your dad just retired, what, 20 years ago?
No, it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, it wasn't 20 years ago, but
Yet. Okay. But you know what I mean? I
can't
just didn't know if
remember.
it was like a new.
10, 15.
No, it's
Okay.
nothing new. Typically, somebody's assigned to that
Okay.
because there is certain stuff that you want to release, stuff that you can't release, but There's also people within the police department that you probably do not want in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you don't trust what they're going to say. So,
Okay.
yep, you typically pick either one or a few people to do it.
And it's like anything else. I mean, everybody has what they're good at, and you need officers that are doing whatever it is that they're good at, but that doesn't mean they're good at public speaking. You know what I mean? So, and I'm sure it's up to leadership to figure out, like with any job. I mean, again, this is what we're talking about. Like, this isn't just the police department. This is corporate America as well. With any job, the leadership is going to select who has the best skills for what particular job.
Correct. Yep. They try. And honestly, I wouldn't even say I'm great at public speaking or really any good. It just, the job that I do now, it falls underneath that. I at least know what I can and can't say, and I'm open to working with the media and being transparent and whatnot. So I make do.
Yeah, no, for sure. So to give a little bit more context, let's get into how you grew up. Talk about your family a little bit. These are the things that I want people to understand, and then we'll kind of get to the point where, we met each other and our paths started crossing, and then kind of where we are today. So let's start with where you were born and how that looked for you as you started growing up.
Okay. So I was born in Trenton, New Jersey, which, if people aren't familiar with Trenton, not the best place to live. A lot of poverty, a lot of crime. So between living in Trenton, New Jersey, and then also lived in Philadelphia for a period of time, grew up in poverty. So growing up, honestly, when you grow up one way, you really don't know different unless you see different.
Yeah.
So there was some stuff that we just thought was normal and okay. So growing up, I know when we get into why I wanted to become a police officer, I never really had a ton of positive interactions with police.
Okay.
In places like that, police are dealing with crime and other stuff. So it's not like we were doing a bunch of activities where police would come and it was in a positive light. So we never really seen much of it. Typically, if we seen the police, it was because they were dealing with something negative, either arresting somebody or breaking up something or something like that. So coming from an environment like that, I think culturally, we just didn't care for police because we always thought they were just there to address something negatively. And then plus a lot of my family members, either drugs or in jail. So you don't hear too many good stories when it comes to that because typically people are in jail are saying, hey, either I was set up and that's not everybody.
Yeah.
Some people, they own up to what they've done wrong, but there's others that feel like, nope, the police did this and whatever. So that was a lot of what I've seen.
So what you're saying is that as a kid, you would see family members, friends, neighbors, whatever, being arrested for different things or whatever might be going on, and then the feedback that you're getting, you're not talking to the police officer, you're talking to the individual who had the interaction with the police officer after the fact, and they're kind of passing the blame and I didn't do anything wrong, they're coming after me, and that's kind of what shaped your view a little bit. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
And then also, yeah, like I said, just never seeing them in really a good light. We weren't out playing games and stuff with police. So, yeah, just thankfully I had a strong mother because we went through some stuff as kids. Again, growing up in poverty, it sucks. And seeing other people in better situations than you, and then there are times where you wish, like, okay, why couldn't that be me? Why couldn't that be the family that I was born into? But I just really appreciated my mother because none of us are perfect, and especially us that are parents. We could say easily we'd go back and do things different, but I've told my mom before I would never change anything about our life growing up because that is what made me who I am.
Yeah.
And it toughened us up. And so growing up, my mother was on us about, hey, I don't care what environment you grow up in. you don't have to be that way, and you won't be that way. And she'd tear us up in a heartbeat if we did something wrong and whatnot, and she was going to correct us. And she was determined that she wasn't going to let us be a certain type of way and be another statistic.
So that brings up a couple of quick questions for me. First of all, you are a black male, okay?
Yes.
And the neighborhood that you grew up in, is that the way it was? Was that most of the demographic?
Yes.
Okay. And what makes me curious when you talk about the police interactions and stuff like that, because a lot of people are talking about this stuff. So, what's the story? Were the police mostly white, or was there a mix, or how was that set up? Do you remember?
Or was that even a thing? We talk about kids remembering, or even
Yeah.
I really can't recall
Yeah.
specifically, but it wasn't a thing that really stuck out to me because when you look at stuff that's common, it is more common for white males to be police officers.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure I saw black police officers because coming from that area, then you're going to have people of color who are cops just because there are more people of color in the area.
Right.
But it was very common just to see white officers in the area.
And that's the perspective that I'm curious about, because the point that Morgan made, we talk about that, kids, it seems like kids don't really see color.
don't.
You know what I mean? And especially kids, today.
or at least our
And
kids.
it's just, it's just like, that's my buddy or whatever. So I'm curious, in the mind of a young boy, your age then in Trenton, were you seeing any of that, or was any of that being pushed on you at all, of like, oh yeah, these guys or whatever? And if not, then not. Cool. It's just that I'm kind of curious on how that played out.
It wasn't being pushed on me. And when we talk about what's common and uncommon, it was common to see white males as cops because it was common all around the country. But as far as the area I grew up in, just seeing white people in general out and about doing stuff, that was uncommon.
Okay.
It's just like interracial dating was uncommon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even though we seen it, it was still uncommon in that area.
Yep.
And I really didn't see a ton of that to where at least I can say I started noticing it until I got here to Nebraska. That's when it really became like, oh my goodness. Like, okay, you have white people dating black people, and
Yeah.
So and we'll definitely get into that. So I think that kind of puts a lid on that, and it's an interesting point of that the race thing with police officers in the neighborhood and things like that wasn't really a thing where you came up.
Probably because I was so young.
Yeah.
But to older people, it may have
might have
been.
been. Yeah.
Because you are our age.
Correct.
41.
Yep.
So just giving people perspective,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that would have been
90s.
late 80s.
Or yeah.
Late 80s.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
And then you moved out of there.
well, let's hold on just a second. So
I was just trying to figure out
in
age-wise.
at that point there, you mentioned your family a few times and your siblings and things like that. So what was your family unit like? What did you have for brothers, sisters, and how was your family set up?
So I have a brother that's 2 years older than me. So it was just my mother, me, my brother, my biological father. I had never met him. So he left prior to me being born, which when you speak of being a black male in that environment, it is more common for
Right, sure.
kids in that environment for their dad not to be there. And statistically, if you don't have a dad involved, then statistics out there show that there's more of a chance for you to have a kid to go down the wrong path. And I was fortunate enough that my mother was strong enough that she played the role of both mom and dad. Now, with my biological father leaving, I did have a stepfather that came into my life. And he's great, and I owe him a lot of credit too. And I'll tell him in a heartbeat, he's my real father because he's the one that was there. So he also played a huge part in keeping us on the right track and My mother was the disciplinarian, and he was more the
The fun one.
the fun one. And, yeah.
That's what dads do.
He loved that role, I bet. Like,
Yes.
dang, sometimes I'm like, can you like do something over here than just be fun?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I get it. I
Yeah.
get it.
And what age did he come into your life?
Pretty early. I believe I was only a few months old when he came into
Oh,
my life.
wow.
Very early,
So you
yeah.
only knew him.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
And so him and my mother, I think there was some time periods kind of off and on, but he's been there my entire life.
Yeah, perfect. So that's what I was wondering. That's kind of the initial story that I was looking for.
I thought he was going to say, if you can't beat him, join him. I thought that's where you're going with that story.
Yeah.
Being a police officer.
Yeah. So from Trenton, what happened next? What made your guys' next change?
So my mom's sister, she actually was married to somebody in the military.
Okay.
So she moved to Nebraska, and this is actually earlier before I met you.
Okay.
So we moved to Nebraska for a short period of time with my stepdad, and then we actually moved back to the East Coast.
Okay.
And so moving back to the East Coast, we stayed in Maryland for a little bit, but we were evicted basically out of every place we've ever lived in, all the way up until I was 18 years old. So which caused us to move so much.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were in Maryland, we were getting evicted again, and then we moved back to Nebraska, which was I actually was in the 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
But I was old enough to kind of comprehend stuff more. So when we moved back to Nebraska, we moved to North Omaha.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, shoot, we're right back around my same type of environment I
Yeah.
just left from. And so went to school up north, and then the middle of my 5th grade year is when we moved to Bellevue. My parents were determined to get us out of that environment completely. And I appreciate them for it so much because they wanted to give us an opportunity, a better opportunity they felt to be successful in life. So that's when we moved to Bellevue, went to elementary school, and that's
Yep.
where you and I met.
Yep.
And met a bunch of our other mutual friends and
Yep.
whatnot, or at least people that we remember back in the day that we were acquaintances with.
Right.
Can I ask, when you guys were getting evicted, was your mom being real and raw? Like, hey, we got kicked out, or was it like, hey, we got to go somewhere else? Do you remember that? And like comprehending when you think about why you guys had to leave, or
I wouldn't say they were hiding it, but I wouldn't say that they were flat out being real.
yeah,
We knew stuff.
it was just hard
There
to
was
pay
times
bills.
where we would
Yeah.
see eviction notices.
Okay.
I remember even in Maryland, there was one time where, my parents tried to do for us. My parents loved us a lot. They were very supportive at everything, sporting events, everything we did. We would do a lot of family stuff between family dinners, movies, bowling. We'd do a ton of stuff together. There was one time where I believe for Christmas they had bought us bedroom sets.
Oh,
and so
okay.
we had this stuff for a while, bedroom sets. We had new couches and whatnot. And then one day we got home from school and all of that stuff was gone.
Oh,
And come to find out that it had been repossessed.
okay.
And so from a young age, we had to deal with so much that there wasn't really time to sit around and say, oh, why'd this happen to me? Or, hey, we don't have a bunch of food in the house, poor us. And it was just, no, it's just, okay, this happened. And then you move on.
Move on.
So we come home from school, we see the furniture gone.
And next, like,
Okay,
yeah,
on
like,
to the
all
next
right,
thing. We go
uh-huh.
out, play. Hey, we don't have food. Okay, what do we have in the cupboard? We got chips, bread, and okay, we
Yeah.
do with what we got.
Yeah.
So we learned at a young age to grind and just not be so focused on, hey, I don't have this. Hey, poor me. It was like, no, we just got to keep going. This is life. It kind of was the norm for us, which it made us who we are today because it's kind of a blessing and a curse. Because like you mentioned a little earlier when we were talking as far as about being sensitive.
Yeah.
I'm not very sensitive, which comes from the job, which I know we'll get to, but also just because the way I was brought up in life.
You ain't got time for that.
Yeah, we don't have time for that.
Yeah, let's go.
As a family, we worked hard. It was, okay, hey, my dad was in construction and he's great at it. And so it was my brother and I, we were working with him. And we'd play sports. And then it was, okay, hey, you might be tired, but no, we still need to go as a family. Dad needs help. That way we can help make money. And so we just didn't have time to sit around and be sensitive saying, poor me. It was like, no, let's go.
With all those evictions and moving around a lot, did you start to develop this feeling that poverty is just a part of our life? Like it's following us. It doesn't matter if we're in Nebraska, Philadelphia, New Jersey. It's just, that's the way it is. That's the way it is for us.
Yeah. And, decision making by my parents, and people can look at this a few ways. And I talk to kids about this all the time that go through stuff. Everyone has a story. So whether mine is poverty and all the stuff I've been through, somebody else that may not have been in poverty, but they have other adversities that they had to face and fight through. So some people will be in a situation and they'll just be a victim of it and say, hey, this is me. This is just kind of what my life is destined to be. My brother and I weren't that way. We looked at everything that my parents did, good and bad, and we learned from it. And we were determined that we don't want this. And so as my brother and I got older, you go through a period with your sibling where you fight and whatnot. And we really got close probably after high school. And we start telling each other, especially when we got off the phone, break the mold. We wanted to be the ones to break the mold of our family and to where we started a whole new generation of, we don't have to be rich, but we at least want our families to be in a good place to where they're not wanting for food or worrying about a place to live, those type things. So we always told each other, break the mold, and we always supported each other and tried to push each other to be better.
That's very interesting. So, based on those things that you said there, and from the timeline, we're at 5th grade. You move back to Nebraska. We meet. That's where I want to kind of get into some of the next things. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll jump into the next topic. This episode is brought to you by a company near and dear to our hearts, Farm Focused. FarmFocused.com, FOCUSED. It's the #1 provider of branded merchandise for the top brands in agriculture. Folks like Millennial Farmer, Welker Farms, Larson Farms, Calf Fed, so many more. Again, check it out, farmfocused.com. Being farm focused is a way of life. It's a brand you can be proud to be a part of. Thanks for listening. All right, we're back with Howard. So picking up where we left off, your family moves to Nebraska. And as you said, you had been to Nebraska and then went back out, and now you're back to Nebraska. And you probably didn't know it at the time, but it was permanently.
Bellevue.
And so, well, then you guys moved from North Omaha to Bellevue, and that's where I want to pick up is when you get into Bellevue. So we're in 5th grade. I don't know, halfway through 5th grade or something. Is that the way you remember it?
Yep, halfway through 5th grade. Probably just like anybody else going into a new school. Don't know anybody.
And mid-semester, like halfway through? Dang, that's even harder.
Yeah. Nervous.
And a huge change from, like you said, from the environment that you had been living in and growing up in. And it was, your parents' choice that said, hey, we need to get out of this environment. We need to get in something that's going to be better for the kids, I think, is what kind of the way I'm interpreting what you're saying. And Bellevue was that.
Correct. Bellevue was that. So moving to an area where it's majority white.
Yeah.
You feel like an outcast.
Yeah.
And when you go into an environment like that, then typically you're going to search for people that look like you. Because even though it's not necessarily true, because you can have a white, black person, Hispanic person that, come from the same environment and they may click. But initially just looking at somebody, typically people will base their stuff off of that where they're like, oh, hey, I'm black, so I'm probably going to have something in common with the other black kids around here. So typically that's what you search for. I think what made it easier for me was sports.
Yeah.
And me liking sports. And so getting to 5th grade, and I don't know how you were eventually, but I mean now, but back in the day when I first met you, you were a really good athlete. And
He still is.
I'm all right.
so between playing basketball or, football out at elementary school, or even the little races that we would have for PE or whatever, you clicked that way.
Yeah.
And some other friends that we could name or acquaintances, I think that was kind of what brought us together was the fact that we were all decent athletes in school.
Yep, for sure. So we were, the way that I remember it, just for people to, to kind of paint this picture for people, where we are sitting here today recording is where I lived, which is a ways from Bellevue. But my father was a Bellevue police officer. So I had a sister 2 years younger than me. I have a sister 2 years younger than me. And my dad took her and I up to school every day. Now, my grandparents, my mom's parents, lived in the same neighborhood that you guys moved to. And I spent a lot of time at their house. It was right up the hill from the elementary school. So I would get dropped off there in the morning. I could walk to school. I could walk home. I could do my homework there. Those were the kids that I spent a lot of time with, and you were one of those kids. So for people to kind of understand that picture, we were in this neighborhood where my grandparents lived. Around the corner in another house was a good buddy of ours named Jeremiah, who we had met. He actually was a transplant as well. I think they might have came from New York. And then you guys were essentially in the same neighborhood, but over in the apartments. And there was a few kids over there as well. And so we all kind of knew each other, obviously, from school, but then we were out there on the block, like you said, playing football, playing basketball, all kinds of street ball games, all the different things that we were doing, whatever the crazy, stupid things the kids were doing. But that's the story for folks to understand. So, what was that like for you, where you lived, and what your day-to-day was like, and the interactions that you had with kids in the neighborhood like myself and Jeremiah? What do you remember about that?
So I just remember it was great because with the differences in race or upbringing or the different economical status, that didn't play a role in our friendship. When we went out and played football, it was just kids out in the street or on the side of Jeremiah's house or wherever.
Right.
We would just go have fun. And it would be for a long time. We'd play football and then go home. And you guys never made me feel any different or out of place or like, hey, we don't want to be around him because he doesn't have this or whatever. And then we had one of my best friends that was also kind of in our group, Adrian,
Yep.
who we've talked about, who actually is currently in jail. And we've still been friends for all these years. But you could kind of see it that people in our group may be involved in different things. But when we came together and just played, that's all it was just playing. And it felt great. Stuff like that was an outlet. So I'm not saying it was every day that we didn't have food. But if Adrian was sitting here now, he'd tell you, because we lived right across from each other in the apartments, that we would be at whoever's house had food. So if we didn't, then I'd be at his house. If he didn't have food, then he'd try to come over to my house. And so we knew you guys didn't know any of that stuff because it wasn't like we just went around and, oh, hey, I'm getting ready to go home. I don't have food to eat. So you guys were an outlet for us because we would just come outside and we would spend however many hours just playing. And then we were away from home. And then we get home and whatever food we can find, we eat. And then from there, it was just we go to sleep, wake up again the next day and
do it all over.
Get back at it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Man.
Are you crying?
A little bit.
Aw.
So,
You're going to make me cry.
yeah. No,
We were just talking about
everybody
being
has-
sensitive.
Yeah, everybody
I'm
has
like,
a story, man, and everyone deals with it differently. And
Yeah.
for that to be your outlet, that had to be a really good thing. You had to feel good.
Yeah.
about that, you know. But you weren't always going over to Ben's and stealing his fruit snacks or anything?
No.
That's what I'd have been doing. I'd have been all over that.
Yeah. So we never, none of either Ben's grandparents, especially, and eventually I got to know his dad, and even Jeremiah's parents, who I got to know really well, and even as I've become an adult, they never shunned us or said, "Hey, you know, you're not allowed in my house," or anything like that. But we just were outside playing and whatnot. So we never were really in their house. Not saying we never went in, but it just now would probably be more common because kids are in playing video games.
Sure.
Back then, it really wasn't as
that wasn't the deal.
big of a deal.
Yep. It was more street ball, basketball, kickball,
Yeah, no
whatever.
one had the phones.
I remember our whole neighborhood would play kick the can or something like that. You know, when we were really little.
Yeah.
It would just be the entire neighborhood. Boys, girls, all of it. That was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just didn't know any better. You just went and had
Nope.
fun. I love
And then
that.
you just never know who's going to play a role in your life. And coming in where you feel like an outcast, the more that people can show they accept you, the better. And it would be no different, let's say, where if you're in a majority black community and you have a white kid come in, that white kid may feel out of place.
Yeah.
And so vice versa. I would say on the flip side, it needs to be the people who are in majority to pull that person aside and take them in to show them that they're included. And that's what I felt like would happen to me. And my friend Adrian, he was more of out there in the street doing stuff that he shouldn't. But again, we just played and had fun. And when he started doing that stuff, I just completely separated myself.
Because you knew you didn't want to do that, or you knew, well, one, that probably, but your mom would not allow that.
She wasn't having it.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, was that a starting point for you and your brother? Like, this is what we want. This is what we want, you know, to be part of a community like this. And to, or like, when did you mentioned that earlier? When did that like light bulb go off for you and your brother? You know,
That probably didn't happen until later, probably towards the end of high school.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
At that early of an age, it was,
You're just having fun. You're enjoying it, right?
I was still in the middle of, hey, I still wanted to do some stuff because impressionable as a young youth and I want to be around my friends and they thought it was cool. So, okay, do I need to be doing this? But there was some other stuff where I'm just like, I'm not doing.
Yeah.
And also, my mom wasn't having it. And I knew she would have beat the mess out of me. And then plus, and I tell kids this to use, if they don't know how to say no, use your parents as the reason.
Oh, I tell my son, our kids this all the time. Just always say your mom says no.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
I don't care, blame me. Is that what
Yep.
you're saying?
Absolutely.
I'm like, I always say that.
Back then it was true.
Okay.
And because
It was true. Like you blamed your mom.
my mom would have beat the mess out of me, but also my friends.
Oh, shit.
And so by me being able to say no, like, hey, I'm not doing this, you know my mom's going to tear me up and you, they're like, yeah,
Oh.
you're right, we know. And so,
we're not going there.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you think you ever had those fleeting moments that you were like, ooh, I wish I was back in Detroit or back in North Omaha? Like,
Not Detroit. They were.
or
in
I'm sorry,
Trenton.
Sorry. Do you remember that
No.
ever thinking? No.
Absolutely
so when
not.
you were, okay, perfect. So when you were in Bellevue, you did feel so welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
felt good. Did I feel out of place sometimes again?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I had people take me in, you know, being able to go out, play with friends, to be accepted. Another thing that helped me was Bellevue Junior Sports Association.
Oh, yeah. BJSA?
Yep. Going up there and playing sports inside of there. And then I met the manager and his wife, and they basically took me in. So even times when kids weren't supposed to be in there, they never kicked me out.
Love that.
I would go up there and be there for hours. And I think over time, I don't know if he knew or just figured, hey, he's coming up here a lot. And there were times where we didn't have a ton of food at home. So as I got older, he started allowing me to keep score and stuff, and to where he would pay me money. And so me, by not having that much money, I tell my daughters now, back in the day, if I got paid money, then I would go home and iron my money. I would iron it and I would keep it in a secret spot because it was, if
That
you don't
precious.
have much,
Yeah.
you take care of stuff. That's just like my mom taught us. I don't care where you live at. Doesn't mean your place has to look crappy and junky. You still take care of whatever you have.
Yeah.
See, I love that because I guess I've just only moved when I was little once, and I just always remember thinking how hard it was. Oh, okay, so hard. From Lincoln to Bellevue, I wanted to go back. So that's what made me think to ask, like, if you ever wanted to go back. So anyways, dang, ironing money. You always hear people. I've heard people have done that. That's huge.
Yep.
So the BJSA that you were talking about, you could walk or ride a bike or whatever. I mean, that was kind of right there in the neighborhood.
You probably played
Right.
there. Didn't you go up there?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
But that was, I think, an important point to make is kind of like a neighborhood facility that was easy for you to access.
Like a YMCA, is that kind of what this was?
Yeah, kinda.
It's kind of like that, but it was
Okay.
something that Bellevue put on.
Okay.
I mean, it's still going today. Like, they're
It
very
is.
successful.
It's
yeah.
it's right down from the high school. Obviously affiliated with the town. Bellevue Junior Sports Association is what it was.
Right.
And yeah, no, that's cool that was a place for you to be able to kind of access and get into. So from there, so that became your guys' permanent spot. And you went to the middle school down the road that we both went to, and then to the high school down the road that we both went to. But as you got into your and maybe you'll have some other things that maybe you want to chat about a little bit, but as you got into your high school years, there were some different things that happened as well, right?
Yeah. So still living over there and, going to BJSA and that helping me out and whatnot. But as we got into middle school and still occasionally struggling with money, like when I use the terminology hustle, sometimes people think of that in a bad context because when you think hustling, you might think selling drugs or something like
Ripping
that.
somebody off. Or,
Right.
Yes.
There
Yep.
still is legal hustling. So even once I got into junior high, I began wintertime. If I knew something was coming up that, hey, I need money for wintertime, I just had a shovel. And I remember actually over by Jeremiah's house, I'd walk up that street and start shoveling people's driveway for money. Yeah, we were big into, they were crappy clothes and, you go to school, you get made fun of. But what made it better was the fact that when I was made fun of, it was the people in my core group that I hung around. So it kind of was, okay, at least we're friends and they're giving me crap, but then I give them crap back. It would have been a lot worse. And I think of people who maybe they're not in the popular crowd.
Yeah.
Or there's some other issues and that people are making fun of them, that it would make them feel horrible. So going through a lot of that stuff, and I could admittedly say I used to actually to also help get money. One crappy thing that I would do is the dollar store. Since it was on the way to school, I would go in there and I would take candy from the dollar store and then bring it into school, and then I would get packs of it, and then I'd come to school and then sell it. That way I could have money. So yeah, obviously that not a legal thing to do, and I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. But one of those things where as kids you go through stuff, you do stuff that you're not proud of, but you learn from it.
I interviewed Willie Robinson, Duck Dynasty.
Okay.
He has he has the same story. That was his first big money making venture. Was when he was in grade school taking candy. He got a box of gum, and he's like, I can't chew all this gum, so he took it to school and sold it all. And then his wheels started turning. He was hustling ever since then. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, you're just like Willie Robinson.
So then in high school, I mean, obviously you were always an athlete and came up playing and stuff like that. So when you got into high school, what did you spend most of your time doing there?
So halfway through my freshman year of high school, in high school I played football, basketball, and track. And again, just like playing with you guys, that was my outlet.
Yep.
I loved basketball and thought that would be the thing that I play. And so I didn't actually even plan on playing football until when I got into high school, I didn't plan on playing football any longer. And so my freshman year, season had already started for football. I was in English class, and our freshman football coach kept asking me to play, and I kept telling him, no, I don't feel like it. So finally, he kept asking me, and I was pissed. And up until then, I thought I had a chip on my shoulder, kind of had a bad attitude. Wasn't horrible, but I did have a bad attitude, bad anger issues. And he kept asking me, and it got annoying to me. And so finally I was pissed and told him, I'm going to just come out there just so I can shut you up, because I was tired of him asking me. And so went out to football practice, and then was watching the quarterback throw, and I'm like, hey, do you care if I try? And they're like, yep. And I threw a pass, and then from that day on, I was a quarterback. And then I stayed with football, and then football ended up being my sport that I played in college and loved it. But the middle of my freshman year is when we got evicted out of our apartment. And so we ended up moving back to North Omaha. Thankfully, my parents kept me going to Bellevue because I was supposed to transfer and go to Omaha Central. But kept me going to Bellevue, so they'd get up, take me every morning, and then pick me up after school, which I appreciate. It was tough because if I didn't have sports or school, I wasn't coming to Bellevue. Mm-hmm. So when I got picked up, there wasn't, hey, yeah, there's an easy way to get back to Bellevue around all your friends, because I didn't have, it's not like when I moved to Omaha, back to Omaha, I had a ton of friends. I didn't have any. Yeah. So I was just in the house by myself, and the apartment we were staying in by myself, and with my brother and my family, but that was it until it was time to come back to school.
So to make you want to be at school and at the sports even more?
Yeah. I enjoyed school a lot. So actually, two things my freshman year. So my brother was 2 years older than me, and he played football too. So partially because of ride situation and my parents not being able to, or me not wanting them to have to come get me after school, and then Friday nights or something, have to come pick my brother up from after football games, I would stay. So stay for my football practice and then wait till his is done. And Friday nights, I would stay and go to Coach Level, who he let me start coming to the football games. And he would give me a pen and paper, and my job on Friday nights as a freshman was to follow him around the sideline. And I had to write down every play that he called and how many yards, either negative or positive, it got, which at the time we sucked, so it was a bunch of negative. But that was my job, and it helped me to learn the plays. Oh. And it gave me a step up, and it also brought me closer to Coach Level, because then I think he started to understand the dynamic of my family. Yeah. And what position we were in. So he never shunned me away. He always included me and said, hey, you're welcome to come to anything.
And I mean, giving you the clipboard like that, that's just typical backup quarterback stuff. Like I'm sure in his mind, he was actually doing something there where he's like, let's see if he picks us up. Let's see if he can stick with it. So I bet there's a little bit of a method to his madness there, and it worked out.
Was that the same coach that would not leave you alone?
No.
Okay. So there's a couple coaches there that you
freshman coach and
freshman coach got me to go out, and I still give him credit to this day. I really didn't have a ton of contact with Coach Level until I started doing that stuff for the varsity football team.
Okay.
So that happens. You guys move up north. As you finished your high school, were you guys always living up there in North Omaha then until you graduated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, lived in the exact same spot. My senior year, so I wanted to get out of Nebraska. I was dead set on I wanted to go down south, wanted to go play football at Grambling State University, but my senior year, like we were still struggling.
Yeah.
I took senior pictures, but was unable to get them because we didn't have the money. Simple stuff, Letterman jackets, and didn't have. Even when we played basketball my senior year, I was borrowing shoes from a teammate every day to go play. When we had our warm-ups for basketball, I don't know who did it, if it was the coach or if it was another player whose parents paid for me, but I didn't have enough money. Like there was team shoes I couldn't buy. Didn't have enough money to pay for the warm-up, but I think somebody else paid for me or the coach just said, hey, we'll just let them have it. So went through a lot where grand scheme of things, when I think back to it, I still made it through and I don't need all that stuff, which again made me stronger. But as a kid, it still sucks when you see other friends and acquaintances with this stuff, or they're doing things, or they have cars and can go places and having fun, and you're not necessarily involved and can't do that stuff. And it does affect you.
And to me, it didn't sound like you were the kid then really talking about it much, or like you said, never saying, hey, I didn't have the food, or you probably weren't like, hey, I don't have a car, give me a ride. It was just like you dealt with it. If someone offered you a ride, you'd take it, but you weren't the one seeking it out.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did stuff occasionally, like, if a friend, hey, we're going to a basketball game and I'm already at the school and coordinated it, then absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had people that looked out for me, which, I still appreciate those
That's
people to
huge.
this day.
Yeah.
So high school, kind of comes to an end. What did you talked about you wanted to go down south and play football. So what actually happened? What did you do?
So at the time, again, with us having financial issues, and I didn't have a scholarship to go down south and play. UNO football was recruiting me. I didn't want to get down south and not be able to afford it because I didn't know anybody. And I'm like, you'd be screwed. So I just decided, hey, I'm going to stay and go to UNO and play football. It caused an issue between my mother and I because she wanted me to go down south and, hey, nope, get out of here, go do what you want to do. But my parents had the mentality of, hey, just do it, we'll be okay and make it happen. But me, I'm a very logical thinker where I'm like, well, no, we barely can pay our rent. Like, I'm not going to do it. I'll just stay here. And so when I graduated, I was working full-time construction with my father and still going up to UNO to start my football workouts. So actually, one of my best friends, Marcus, that I was talking about earlier, he had already been up at UNO playing football for a year. So when he was coming, excuse me, he would come pick me up. And between him and then another friend, they'd pick me up and then drop me back off home afterwards. So I'd work construction 8 hours a day, get home, go straight to football, 3 hours, come back home, do it again. So
Dang.
And you went to school at UNO.
Yes. Yep. Went to school at UNO.
And for folks that don't know, UNO is University of Nebraska at Omaha.
Yeah.
So you're sticking around. And at the time, UNO had a hell of a good football team.
Yes,
I
really
mean,
good
it
football
was a
team.
powerhouse at Division II. They were really
Really?
good.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
See, I don't
the
remember that.
Mavericks.
You know, everyone always talks about UNL and Huskers and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, really good football team at the time. So played for 2 years. Still going through a bunch of stuff with parents, and so my life really wasn't on track like I wanted it to be. So I was actually going to college, playing football, and I was working at the time. I started working in Bellevue on a military base, so I'd go to work until late at night. So again, to me, that was just routine. Hey, you got a goal of where you want to get to. And around that time is when it really started to set in as far as I want better for my life.
There you go.
I don't want
Yeah.
to go through all this. And so that's why when I had to do all that stuff, it was no problem to me because I said I have a bigger goal that I'm reaching for at the end. So probably 2 years into football. Actually, sorry, let me back up because this is kind of leading into why I became a cop.
Okay.
So my senior year, our school police officer, Officer Schoonover, he's no longer a police officer.
Okay. Yep.
But we probably connected because of sports.
And this was high school school resource officer.
Correct. Yep. Our high school resource officer. We connected because of sports, and he was one of the reasons that made me want to be a cop. I had been through so much in my life that I felt I could give back to people, especially kids, because I didn't want them to have to go through the same thing that I went through. And I figured that I can relate to them better. So kids are more likely to listen to people who they feel you've gone through what I've gone through. If kids can see a person that has made it out of a situation, then they are more likely to believe that they can and have hope. That's the biggest thing that you can give a kid is hope. If you get a kid that, let's say they're come from poverty, and you get someone who has never been there, they could be telling that kid everything right. But occasionally that kid's not going to listen to them just because they think the kid's like, oh, you haven't never been through poverty. You don't know how hard it is to get out. You had everything handed to you. So it's just one of those things to where I felt I could give back. And so Schoonover, we talk to this day occasionally when we see each other.
I was going to say, does he know this? I hope so.
He
Okay.
knows it. When we see it. And depending on the setting that I see him in,
Yeah.
he'll brag about it.
Really?
And tell people, yeah, I'm the reason, one of the
my boy.
reasons he became a cop. Yeah,
He's
one of the
still
good
in,
ones.
He's still in Bellevue, right?
yeah, he is.
Yeah. I spoke with him. Gosh, I think just a couple of years ago.
Okay.
But
And he's no longer doing that.
he's not
okay.
a police officer yet.
Okay.
But I never knew that story. But I remembered him from school, obviously.
Oh, you can open it.
Yeah, yeah.
Just,
no
we
problem.
crack them all the time in here.
Yep.
So that kind of gave you that early inspiration, and then, as you said, you had a couple of years of football at UNO, and then what was the?
So I was so focused that even in college, being on a football team, you got 105 people, different personalities from all over the country. We had people transfer in from big schools, Lincoln, University of Miami,
Dang.
like a bunch of schools, and parties, drama, a bunch of stuff. I was so focused that I never got into that stuff. And I'm more family oriented. So my people that I went to play with that came with me from high school,
Okay.
I still stayed close to them, but I kind of kept my distance from others. Even parties in college, I didn't go.
Wasn't your thing.
It wasn't my thing. Drinking wasn't my thing. If I get someplace and it's a bunch of drinking, I'm like, I didn't want to get in trouble. So I wasn't going to be doing the stuff that they're doing. And plus, I had to work. And so I had seen drinking so much and what it can do. And I'm just about, hey, I need my priorities straight. So a couple years into football, I just decided I'm going to just focus on trying to become a cop.
Okay.
And which led me to, I just stopped playing football, focused on school, and I ended up taking the police test for Bellevue my senior year. And that's when I ended up getting hired. I went through the interview process, and even when I interviewed, there was a part of me that thought, am I going to fit in at this place? Because majority of the police officers are white. And at the time, there was only one other black officer. And when I went in for my interview, as I'm walking in, the person that has taken me in to do the interview asked me how old I was, and I was only 21 years old at the time. And he says, oh, well, typically we hire people who are 25 and up. So use this as a learning experience and then just come back and apply again. So this is
Oh.
as he's taking me in.
Okay.
And I'm basically like, well, this is pointless now for me to do this. But I still went in. I didn't know anything about being a cop. I'm actually in charge of hiring now, and I look at the questions that we ask, and I'm like, if somebody doesn't have somebody either to help them out or they may not do well on this stuff. So I didn't know anything. So my thing was just to go in there. I am who I am, and I'm going to speak from the heart. And if they like me, they like me. If they don't, they don't. And I end up getting hired.
Were you shocked? Or were you like, oh, I got this in the bag, even though after the guy said that?
I didn't necessarily think I was going to get hired.
Okay, you didn't.
I did not.
You kind of thought it was an experience thing, maybe?
Correct, especially based off of what he said. But when I got the call saying that I'm moving forward in the process, I wasn't shocked.
Okay.
Because I am not a person where when anything happens, where it's like, oh my goodness, this happened. I am, okay, what's next? What do I need to do to keep busting my butt to get to where I need to be?
So whether the call would have been yes or no, it wouldn't have mattered. The reaction was the same. If you would have not gotten that call, or the call would have been, hey, better luck next time, you probably would have had the same mentality. You just would have been like, okay, well, what's the next step? What are we doing now?
Correct. Because at the time, so this is when my brother and I really became close. So my brother went away to the military. He ended up getting stationed back here in Nebraska. So I was in a dorm stay at University of Nebraska at Omaha in the dorms, and there was fights all the time between roommates, and plus I'm anal and picky about stuff being clean, so that wasn't me. So my brother, he got stationed back here, and then we moved in together.
Oh, fun.
And so, yep, I lived with him, paid him rent. He took care of me as a big brother should, and everything timed out perfectly because I start going through the police process. So when I got hired and they were going to send me off to police academy in Grand Island, he got orders for the military. We left. It had to be either a week or a few weeks apart, where I went to police academy, he left, because if it didn't happen like that, there was no way that I could afford what we were living at. So it timed out perfectly by me getting this new job. Now I can afford where we were staying.
Okay, so I should know this, and I've probably asked your dad this, but what does that process look like when you're like going to the police academy, and how long is this?
So it's a little different now.
It's different per state too, do you think?
Different per state.
Okay.
It's even different now than when I went through it. So
Oh.
back then it was in Grand Island. Actually, now we have our own local academy. That's about 18, I think it's 20 weeks long.
Okay.
And
Anyone could show up, say they want to be a cop,
Well, you
and
have to get
run
accepted.
through this?
You have to get accepted to it, right?
2 ways.
Okay.
Well, maybe a little different now, but back then, typically you would get hired by a police department, and then that agency would pay for you to go to police academy.
But to get hired, you just had to have a degree, or just wanting, like, what did you have to get hired? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like, yes, you had the interview, but what was on your resume to say, I'm qualified to be a cop?
So I didn't have a ton.
Okay.
So at the time when I was working on the military base inside the base exchange,
Yeah.
I was actually doing loss prevention. So security, even though it was nothing even comparable to policing, it still showed I had a little bit of experience in that field.
You dabbled in it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So with me being in charge of hiring now, I go out and I talk to colleges, and I don't even focus on criminal justice students, or it's not even always about college, because
Okay.
college, even though I will say education is extremely important, but it is not the end all be all. You can have somebody with a doctorate in criminal justice, but I could go pick somebody at Subway that doesn't have a degree, and they may be a better cop than that person with the doctorate.
Absolutely. Okay.
It comes down to, are you a people person? Do you have a good heart for service? If you have a good heart for service, you're good at communicating with people, and you just want to work hard, and you can be trained, I would take that person any day over somebody that just says, hey, I have this education, and this education.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know why in my head I thought there was something, like some degree, something you had to even apply
Right.
to say you wanted to be an officer.
Oh,
Okay.
And every agency's different.
But this was then. Okay.
Even at the time when I was getting on, Bellevue, which is why, and the person that made that statement to me, he and I are actually very close. And he doesn't even remember he said it. And I
That's
brought it
great.
up to him later, and he just kind of laughed. But we're very close, and there's no hard feelings.
Yeah.
But that's because at the time, Bellevue was looking for, they figured, more mature people. Because they figure if you were older, you would be more mature. Or they were looking for prior military, or somebody with at least 2 years associate's degree.
Experience, probably.
Yes.
Just, yeah.
So they're not saying you have to have this, but they prefer
Okay.
people like this. And I felt that I grew up quick in life. And so I felt that I was more mature and that I was ready for it, because at that time when my friends and people were out drinking and smoking and doing other stuff, that wasn't me. Even my best friend to this day, he'll tell you he used to go out and party a lot, but there was time he wouldn't even ask me because he knew that just wasn't me.
Yeah.
I'd rather sit at home and watch TV and chill and get ready for the next day. I was just focused.
So you got that call back or whatever, and this was your senior or just after your senior year in college, or it was during your senior year? Is that what you said?
Right before my senior year. I
Right
just
before,
earned
okay.
enough credits to where
Okay.
I was a senior.
Okay.
And then, I got the call, got hired by the police department, had to go to the academy. I, at that point, stopped school because it is difficult to go to the academy and then also go through field training and still try to do school. So went to Grand Island, which I didn't mind. I was single at the time, and
Yeah.
you're there Monday through Friday, and then you come home on the weekend, so you can just be there and focus. And you're in a dorm atmosphere. So made it through police academy and came back, went through field training. After I got done field training is when I was solo on the street by myself, but then I went back to school. So the department was very supportive of it because I wanted to finish my education, which was more a personal thing. Because again, coming from the environment I came from, when you don't see a ton of people getting formalized education, it was just a personal goal that I had. So department was very supportive. I was working overnight, I believe either 6 to 6 or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., something like that. And so actually the same person that during my hiring told me that, hey, come back, he was my commander
Okay.
when I worked nights. And so I enrolled in classes. So one night a week, I actually had a class on the military base. So he would let me, I just wouldn't wear my uniform top and gun and all that stuff. I would go, and he actually would let me take the police cruiser. I'd go on base, go to my class. It was probably 2-3 hours long. I'd come back out and then go right to work and then work to the morning.
Nice.
And then I would sleep until 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then I would get up, and then I usually had 2 or 3 classes that I would have to go to during the day, and then I'd go back to work that night. So
Wow.
I did that for a year. It was stressful, but I ended up, year and a half, but I ended up finishing my my degree, doing that.
Nice. So let's talk about the job a little bit. So when you started, your first assignment was basically like a patrolman on night shift. Is that?
Yeah.
Why are they always giving the newbies the bad shifts? The night shifts.
As a police officer, anybody that is new, I always tell them, you need to go do nights for at least 2 years.
Okay.
Nights and days are completely different types of policing.
Okay.
During the day, majority reports, because typically the in-progress stuff and crimes, a lot of the stuff, even though it happens in the day occasionally, but a lot of stuff happens at night. And then what the report during the day is because people wake up and they find, oh, hey, my car's been broken into or something like that. So a lot of the in-progress stuff and an officer experiencing that stuff and learning how to think on their feet quickly comes from working nights.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
It's even to this day, a lot of the new officers, some of them get stuck on days because there's a lot of veteran officers that like working nights. They don't like being around the command staff. They just want to go out there and feel they can be free to do their job. So they just like working nights. So the newer officers will get stuck on days, which to me, I wish they could go to nights because to me it's hindering their progress.
Oh,
but
okay.
it kind of is what it is when you have to bid based off of seniority.
Yeah. Our neighbor works nights, and I'm like, man, you've been with the force long enough. You shouldn't have to work nights. And he's like, oh, yeah.
He likes it.
Now
Yeah.
you're kind of, okay,
Yeah.
now I
Yeah.
get it, yeah.
So that was your first assignment, was nights in a patrol car, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
I did that for approximately 2 years. I worked in the same area for a while. I was the bottom of the totem pole. So I really got the area that nobody else wanted to work in. But after working in it, I liked it.
And
then-
for reference, how big is Bellevue? Like for the audience.
So at the time, Bellevue was probably between 40 and 50,000. Right now, Bellevue's approximately 65,000.
Is it already? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just took over the second or third largest city.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
That's
It just
crazy.
overtook
in
Grand Island.
Nebraska, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Because the running joke is Memorial Stadium on Saturdays is the third largest city,
Yes.
and it still is. It
Yes.
packs in 95,000, but yeah, for the longest time it was Grand Island at 2,000, something like that. But yeah, Bellevue just
Because
took it over.
in my head, I think Bellevue as way smaller than that.
No,
Like,
it's okay.
oh,
Yeah,
you
it's a
could
pretty big
patrol
city.
like all of Bellevue,
well,
you
and-
know, through the night. Like, I don't know. I just
Like-
think it's so small.
Yeah,
But
it's really spread out because like Ashley and I lived for like 13, 14 years. You wouldn't consider that Bellevue over
Yeah.
there, on the west side of Highway 75, but it is a big portion of that is Bellevue.
okay.
And that's been growing for a long time.
So you're
Yeah.
patrolling in the middle of the night, learned a lot,
So you did that you
2
said 2
years.
years.
2 years. Yep.
ready to be done though at 2?
No.
Okay.
When you come in as a new officer, you're excited.
Well, but I
It's-
mean nights, like done with nights.
No.
No. Okay. You were wanted to.
You're excited. You want to be out there working and getting drugs and guns off the street. And I had, just played football shortly prior to that. So I was in the best shape of my life. And
I mean, come on. You're still in good shape.
chasing people down, and it was fun.
Yeah, okay.
Being able to drive a cruiser fast. Yeah, it was fun. But my mentality from then to now has completely shifted. But after 2 years of working road patrol, learning a lot, the school that we graduated from, the position of school resource officer came open, an internal position. And actually, I had already started back at the school coaching football. So since I wasn't playing anymore, I still went back there and start coaching. So then when the school resource officer position came open, and it's just a specialty unit within the police department, I put in a letter of interest, and we do interviews, and I end up getting selected for it. So I then went and got to be a school resource officer at the same high school I graduated from. So plus I can continue to coach football there, which I did for, 14, 15 years. So that was probably the best time of my career.
And how long were you resource officer there?
So I was the resource officer there for 5 years.
Okay.
And I would have stayed, but once I hit my 7-year mark of being on the police department, I took the sergeant's test to get promoted. So once I got promoted is when I had to come out of the school. So I went back to nights and began supervising, and eventually I end up being moved to be the supervisor over the school resource officers.
Oh, okay. And that's where you are currently?
Nope.
No.
So-
Okay. It still progresses. Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
So I did that until approximately 2 years ago.
Okay.
So I loved my time as a school police officer. And my thought was, well, I'm just not going to go in here and just be a report taker or whatnot. It was about building relationships and making a difference. The biggest reason I became a cop was to make a difference in people's life. Also, I knew if you get somebody who hasn't had very many good experiences with cops, or even if they just haven't had, if their perception of police was based off of what they heard around them. Because if we're out in the street and somebody has a bad opinion about a cop, there's some that will say, hey, well, I had this experience, and whether it's true or not, that's their own perception. But a lot of people have a perception because of stuff they heard from somebody else or stuff they've seen. Hey, I seen this on social media, or hey, my friend said that this and this and this happened to him. And what I always tell people, I'm like, well, I have friends myself that have told me stories and then later come find out that they didn't tell me the whole truth.
Yeah.
So I never want to complain about something if I'm not willing to do it myself and try to see how it is. So I also wanted to be a cop because I'm like, okay, no, I can do this, but I also want to show people that there's good ones. And so when I got back to the school and became a school resource officer, my first priority was making a connection with the kids. And it was still awkward because a lot of the teachers that were there when I went to school were still there. But it shifted from me looking at them like, hey, what do I do? And it shifted to them looking at me like, hey, well, what are we doing this? Or them, when we were in school, you kind of always wondered about what a teacher's life was like. And then now I'm seeing it firsthand. And I'm seeing teachers where I'm like, oh, my goodness, you got all these problems? Like, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I thought your life was great.
You had summers off. I mean, shoot, it's so easy.
No. So working in the dean's office, actually the dean's secretary, who was there when I was a student, she told me that she thought I was too young to be back there because I was 24 years old. She says, you're too young. These kids aren't going to respect you.
Ooh, did
You're
that
too
give
close
you
to their
like
age.
determination though to kind of not shift that, but maybe?
I'm going to say no. And this
Okay.
is why I say no. I am my biggest critic, and I push myself harder than anybody else is going to push me.
Okay.
So
No, that didn't phase you.
I knew I could do it. So
Okay.
I'm like, whatever. Okay. So she actually came back and apologized because shortly after, she said, I really thought that you were too close to these kids' age and that they would just get over on you and you would just be friends with them. But she said, what I've noticed is that you are very nice and you are great at building relationships with them, but you also set a boundary to where they know that if they cross that line, that you are going to be on them, which I was. But in order for me to be able to be on them in a certain way, it all came from the relationships I built with them, because I knew they first have to know that you care. And kids can read BS in a heartbeat. And if they thought that I was just in there to do a job and didn't care, I felt they wouldn't have had any respect for me.
Yeah.
The other thing, because I coach football, I didn't want to make it look as if I only connected with the athletes. So I'd sit down, I'd eat lunch with the kids who maybe weren't in the popular crowd that played magic cards. And I'd go up one class, I went to a room and I sat with them and played magic cards. I had no idea how to play, and they got a kick out of
You were the
kicking my rear
nerd.
end.
You were the nerd.
Yes. yes, I was the nerd that day.
Yeah.
Yep, just did a ton of different stuff. Yeah. I would go to a lot of the sporting events, and like wrestling, I would go be a scorekeeper. And sometimes I would still be in uniform, and it was funny because you know how at sporting events, people are yelling at if they screw up the clock or something like that.
They weren't yelling at you.
Didn't yell. People would look as if they were going to yell, and then they would see me in uniform, and then some parents would just start laughing, and they would say it in a joking way.
Yeah.
So I just had a great time. I took part we had a play with the step team where I was an actor in it, and I just did a ton of stuff. I ended up starting a mentoring program where I always like to think outside of the box. I don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel on everything, but there's some stuff that I'm like, hey, people have done this before. If I feel I have something that maybe could cover a different base, then I'll go that route. So I knew there had been a lot of mentoring programs. You know, you got big brothers, big sisters, you have teammates, and I felt, okay, what's missing? Teammates, big brothers, big sisters, that's adults, mentoring. But me knowing that kids listen to people closer to their own age, I then started a mentoring program where I had high school students that would mentor younger students. And I tried to set it up to where that mentee, when they got into high school, that they would be a freshman and the mentor would at least be there with them for 1 year.
Okay.
I'd set them up for plenty of different reasons. You know, you may have a kid that just wasn't the most studious. So I'd set them up with a person that could help them with that. We may have had a person that would be considered, you know, the nerdy type, that I'm looking at this kid like, okay, I could see them getting made fun of in high school, but I don't want them going through that. So I would set them up with a very popular kid like the quarterback of the football team, because I knew that that person and their group were going to protect that kid and pull them in. And started small, got up to about 50 kids in there. And that was even me trying to keep it small, because parents were saying, hey, can my kid do this? But I was still a cop. I was still coaching football. I didn't have enough time to let it grow too big. We did a bunch of different things. We would have study halls on Sundays. That way we could help the kids get their grades up. We would do community service activities. We'd go to the Open Door Mission. We would do a fun activity every month where we'd go to Dave & Buster's or do something like that. So we just gave a bunch of incentives. We'd pull the kids' grades every quarter to see their progress. But it also helped the mentors, because we laid out expectations for them. Like, hey, these kids are watching you, and you need to keep your grades up. You can't be out doing stuff, drinking, smoking, and if we hear about you doing it, then there's going to be an issue. And so actually when I was coaching football, the quarterback of the football team, he came to me and he said, I didn't realize how much of an impact I would have on this kid. He said, but I've only been mentoring this kid for a week, and they were texting. And he said, I noticed that exactly how I text that kid texts me back and uses the same terminology. So he says, I really have to watch what I do.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about as far as mentor programs go, how beneficial it is for the mentor themselves. Because you always think about it, it's like the one, you know, the younger one or whatever that we're actually trying to help, but it goes both ways.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
As far as the SRO stuff goes, that's something that I want to dig in more to for sure. But what I want to kind of end this particular episode on is kind of where you're at today as an officer, what your roles and responsibilities are. And I'd like you also to touch a little bit on the story that you and I spoke about that had to do with the not the riots. What would you call it? The stuff that was surrounding the George Floyd incident.
Protests.
The protests.
There were some
That's the
riots,
word I'm
some
looking
protests.
for. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Because that came to every town in America, and it was very interesting to me to watch from the outside and seeing what was going on TV and seeing what was going on social media. And knowing who you were and seeing where your involvement was in that. So, real quick, you've been highly involved in the last few years in, I think, what they would call community policing, right?
Yes.
That would be where kind of your role is,
Yes. Yeah.
along with the hiring and those types of things. But
Yep. So where I'm at now, so I've been on the police department now going on 20 years. I am in charge of internal affairs, so I deal with all the complaints that come in and investigate those. In charge of hiring, I actually run a mentorship program at the police department, in charge of the media stuff. So there's a bunch of other stuff that I did. So when our new chief came to the police department, he's been there for approximately a little over 2 years. He had asked me why I haven't tried to get promoted. And at the time, I said, SRO was my niche. I love doing it, and I know if I get promoted, I'm going back to nights, which health-wise, I couldn't go back to nights. So also, plus, I have 2 daughters, And I said, I get to tuck my daughters in to bed every night.
Yeah.
I'm not giving that up for no promotion. It's not worth it to me. And so he did ask if I thought about getting promoted and maybe moving to a different area. So he asked me if I was interested in moving to the position that I'm in now. And it took some thinking, and what kind of moved me to do it was thinking bigger picture. I knew I was having an impact on kids' lives, but then I thought if I could also have an impact on the lives of the officers and who we hire, and I get to help select who's coming in our doors, because that is better going to shape how we police and our community. So I chose to do it with, he promised me that I could still stay involved with the school police officers, which I had been doing. So I ended up taking the promotional test, and I got promoted to lieutenant, where I'm at now, and I am now the commander over the school police officers. So me still doing the school stuff, and so I'm going to jump to this and then jump to your question.
Yeah.
By building so many relationships, by being a school resource officer, a lot of students who were on the wrong side of the law, I got along with them. So when the George Floyd stuff happened, tough time for police officers. It still is. I'm not a big talker. I don't like really doing public stuff and media stuff and whatnot, but me being a black officer and also being from that environment and now being a cop, I said, who else better? I felt I kind of had a duty to help mend the two sides.
Yes.
Because I said, you really have two sides that don't know about what the other's going through. And I think if both sides tried to understand each other a little more, it would be better. So when the George Floyd stuff started happening, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, why are we standing across from each other if we both think that something that happened is wrong? And one thing, though, that did irritate me was the fact that as a black man, coming from where I came from, I said, it is completely unfair if somebody looks at me and say, because you're black, that you're a thug. You don't group all people together. Yeah, there's some black thugs, but there's white thugs, Hispanic thugs. And so it's unfair to do that to people. You can't generalize stuff. So then when the George Floyd stuff happened and people were talking about cops and all cops, and I'm like, just like as a black person, I don't want people to generalize me with somebody bad. Okay, now that I'm a cop, don't do that to me.
Yes.
So actually, when the protest got out of hand and turned into riots in Omaha, one guy that I knew, he actually was up there and he ended up getting arrested. So his whole family, not his immediate family, on the wrong side of the law. But we had built such a good relationship when I was a school resource officer that he called me
Wow.
after he got arrested.
Okay.
And I told him, hey, come meet me. So he drove to Bellevue. We sat in my cruiser for probably 3 hours talking. And if it was another cop, since he doesn't really like police, he probably wouldn't have listened to him.
Yeah.
But we had a good enough relationship that he explained to me what happened. I told him, I feel you did this, this, and this wrong. And then, but on the flip side, if you feel that somebody else did this wrong, meaning the police, then you need to take steps to try to get it addressed, which means go file a complaint.
Yes.
He's like, all right, cool, I got you. So he went and did whatever he was going to do. So then we caught word that some people who were protesting and rioting and stuff were like, hey, after we get done in Omaha, let's go to Bellevue. There was people actually that went on social media that said, no, don't go to Bellevue because those cops don't mess around, which we like having that perception.
Yeah.
So we got wind that a protest was supposed to be coming to Bellevue, and I reached out to our acting chief at the time. I'm like, hey, what are you guys going to do about this?
Yeah.
And he was like, Howard, I'm actually in a meeting now talking about it. What do you think? I said, that's when I told him, I said, well, I get if something gets out of hand, but why initially are we lining up in front of these people as if it's them versus us?
Yeah, like a standoff. Yeah.
Yeah. I said,
Right.
if we all feel that something's wrong, then why are we standing across from each other? So I said, yeah, there might be differences and whatnot, and we may not all agree on the same thing, but the one thing that we do agree on is the fact that we want a better relationship and that we feel that what triggered this was wrong. So if we stand together to just show unity, this should be about coming together. So he says, okay, well, what do you want to do? I said, how about we just not be against them? And no, we're standing together against stuff like this. So I asked, so he starts giving me information about the protest, and the leader of it ended up being a kid I coached in football. So when he tells me the name, I'm like, I coached him. I said, hey, I'll call and talk to him. So he was like, all right, just call us back and let us know what you want to do. So I called the leader of the protest, and he's like, oh, Coach Banks. And so we start talking. I told him my plan and like, hey, I would like for us to stand together. And I said, how about we come together, we show unity, and that way, if we're showing that we're standing together on something, then anybody else that's coming that has that wants to start something negative or whatnot, they're going to realize that this isn't that type of event. So the person I coached was like, absolutely, that's what I want. So the guy that had reached out to me that got arrested, I called him and I said, hey, I need a favor. He's like, anything you need, I got you. I said, this is the event that we're going to do. We're standing together to show unity. I need you to come down and be a part of it. He's like, yep, I'll be there. So we got there. We circled up, said a prayer. And again, I didn't look at the fact of if there was anybody in this group that they may have thought differently than I don't care.
Yeah.
We at least had somewhat of a small common goal. We let them, safeguarded them, let them walk, say whatever they were going to say, but then also it gave us a time to where when we were standing on the corner, we interacted with them and we could talk about different issues, and it wasn't, hey, them versus us. And there was actually a person with a machete that got out of a car across the street, and then they got out and they just looked over and we seen him, and he got back in his car and left. So
So you did your job. Like
Yeah.
that's exactly what you were
yes.
planning to do.
And then from
Show
there,
unity. Yeah.
we had a,
Yeah.
sorry,
You didn't even have to diffuse it because it was controlled. Everybody was on the same page.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And from there, they kind of put me in charge of any protest that came into Bellevue. We had another one that they were planning at a big intersection that I called them in, and we met and got them to move from that intersection because I said, hey, you got people that oppose you, and I don't want somebody to put y'all in danger or anybody else. I don't want somebody getting hit. And we shifted it from a protest to a unity rally to where we end up holding it at a location, had dunk tanks, music, food catered, face painting. So it was more of a
Dang.
community event to bring people together.
This is, and that's the point why I wanted you to tell that story, because this is what I love about what we do here, because the only thing you heard on national media was how criminal everything was going on and buildings getting burned and, you know, cops inciting things with people and being aggressive and all this kind of stuff. You know, this is all you were hearing. What we like to do is we like to talk about the common folk, common sense stuff that actually goes on the ground. And when you tell that story, man, it's like it's a completely different story than what people were hearing.
And that's a story that didn't get picked up by national media.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
picture was more powerful, or just as powerful, you know, depending on how you want to spin it, than the standoffs you're talking about, where there's a line of cops and their gear on, and then, you know, guys
Yeah.
across the street. You know, like we could have circulated a different picture. You know,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
face painting. Oh my God!
Yeah.
You know, it got to such a level as a community event.
Yeah.
You had police officers supporting our right to protest but making sure that everything was staying safe. Not only was the general public safe, but the protesters themselves were safe, and people were able to do it in a healthy way, and it actually built bonds.
Yeah.
You know, where a protest is out there, like you think it's kind of a negative thing, like, oh, we want something changed, all this kind of stuff, and it gets turned into a scenario where relationships are actually being built.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Correct.
It's huge, man.
And if you don't mind, I want to go back to a question that you asked, but I didn't answer.
Yeah.
Talking about the process of hiring
Yeah.
and what you have to go through. What people don't realize, and the whole purpose of this is humanizing police.
Right.
Police it's different than other jobs, but it's still, you're human. Anytime you have humans in something, you're going to get human reactions. And humans aren't perfect. And there's a small percentage of bad in every profession.
Sure.
And as a police officer, we don't want bad in our profession. I was, don't know if I can. Sorry, if I don't want to offend or use any.
100%, man.
I
Say
was
what you
pissed
think.
off when the
Yeah.
George Floyd incident happened because
Yeah.
this person, I don't care what they did in their life. If somebody doesn't deserve to be in that position and die, I was pissed because when people start turning on law enforcement. I had been doing it for so long and done so much that I wasn't looking for accolades. I don't like any of my stuff being out there about what I do. I just like doing it. But it was like that incident had people, I felt it completely wiped away what I had done because all people seen was just the uniform and you're a cop.
Yeah.
You got
and
put
you're
in a
bad.
box.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. To where I'm like, I've done more stuff than probably the average person.
Yeah.
And you don't know me, so how are you judging me and grouping me in and putting me into this box? So I was pissed.
I bet.
I was pissed at the officer because he did a lot of damage to a lot of officers all over the country, along with other officers that are out there doing bad stuff. But still, it's a small percentage. And it sucks because it's hard to pick. You can't determine who's going to necessarily be good or bad. And when I go out and I talk to colleges and I tell them all the stuff that we go through, which, hey, yes, you have to do an interview, take a test, but you also do a lie detector test, a psychological evaluation, a medical evaluation. You do backgrounds. You try to get to know as much about this police applicant as possible prior to hiring them. But you don't find out everything. And so when you bring somebody in for an interview, all of them say the same thing. Hey, why do you want to be a cop? Oh, because I want to help people.
Yeah.
That sounds good, but realistically, is it the truth for everybody? No. And so when I'm talking to colleges and I speak to a lot of the females and I'm like, okay, hey, if a guy's trying to hook up with you, what do they say? Oh, he's going to take me to dinner and he's nice and does all this stuff. And I said, okay. And then how long does it usually take some of them to change? Well, some change quicker than others. And then then you see the real side of that person. And I said, this is no different than policing. And it sucks that typically in policing, you have to wait till a big incident happens in order to be able to fire somebody. And people don't see a lot of the internal stuff. People think that, oh, hey, cops are going to back each other no matter what and whatnot. And legally, with unions and whatnot, if officers are paying union dues, then the union has to provide them legal representation. So the union just can't come out and say, hey, we can't stand this person or whatever, and they suck. They have to get legal representation. But believe me, there's a lot of conversations behind the scene to where the union is telling that officer, hey, we don't like you. Your ass needs to quit or be fired, but we legally have to represent you. But we don't want to.
Okay.
Because if they don't, then they're going to be sued. So there is a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and trust me, we do not back bad cops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it comes to one unfair thing that I think is when it comes to complaints. I think the general public, if they see an officer that has, hey, this officer has 10 complaints. Well, why are they a cop any longer? they should have been fired. Well, first, it's not that easy
Yeah.
to just fire somebody. Second, just because somebody has 10 complaints doesn't mean that all of those complaints were sustained. I've been doing this for almost 20 years. I probably, to take a guess, might have, 10, 11 complaints. Only one has been sustained. And the one that I did wasn't any crazy stuff where I, used excessive force or anything else like that. It was
Right.
something stupid I did earlier on in my career. But if somebody was to look at my stuff and said, oh, he has 11 complaints. Oh, well, he shouldn't be a cop. Well, if I've been a cop for almost 20 years, that's less than one complaint a year.
Yeah. I mean,
That's really good. And as a cop, sorry, I'm going to make this last
Yep,
point here.
100%. Go ahead. Yep.
As a police officer, you are typically responding and talking to people for something negative most of the time.
yeah. God.
So, like, for instance, you two, if I responded to your house and you two had some sort of dispute, I'm either going to get there and agree with one or neither.
Yeah.
So the chances of me pissing one of you off or both is highly likely.
Yeah, it's 100%.
Yeah, and I'm
yeah.
gonna write you up.
Yeah, you're gonna-
Yeah.
get a complaint from me. Yes,
putting-
that would be easy.
You're
I didn't
putting
think
us-
about it
yeah.
like that.
He's put in a spot where he's either getting one complaint or two complaints.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what I was about to say before you made that point. So I'm glad you made that point. Is when people think about it, like I've been pulled over before. We've all been pulled over before. I'm going 55 and a 45, and it's a construction zone or whatever, and I just really didn't realize it. And I'm cruising down the road, and I get pulled over, and first thing I think is like, this guy has so much better stuff to do than pull me over. Like I didn't do anything wrong. Like
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is just what immediately comes to your head.
Yes.
And then a lot of people could take that to the next level and call in and write a complaint and he was just sitting over that hill just waiting for me. Like
Correct.
like all these kinds of things. And that's what people have to realize is like there's a lot of dumb complaints like that.
Correct. There's a lot of stuff. So I would say probably, to be on the safe side, I'd say 90% or possibly more of the complaints are inaccurate.
Yeah.
And some for different reasons. I would say a small percentage is people just don't like the cops and they are intentionally trying to get them in trouble. I think the bigger percentage is a matter of perception. When you bring stress into something, into a situation, so you may perceive things one way and then that wasn't actually what happened.
Yes.
That's why me being in charge of internal affairs, I love body cameras. Because it's going to show, the body camera isn't going to lie.
Good thing ain't lying. Yep.
Yep. So when I get these complaints and go back and look at a body camera, there's been plenty of times where somebody calls in and says, hey, this officer did this or this was said. And I watch it and I'm like, this never happened.
Yeah.
And then I call the people back. And again, I'm not being jerks to them about it, but because they may have just been stressed and perceived something a different way. So another thing that I do with the internal affairs stuff is education. When we talk about things that people feel are minor violations, I actually just had somebody contact me because they were pulled over because they were honking at somebody. And the officer, technically, you're not supposed to use your horn unless it's an emergency circumstance.
Oh, okay.
This person didn't know that, but still thought it was petty. And I said, yes, to many, they may think it's a small, minor thing, but I said, think bigger picture. We have seen so many incidents where small, petty stuff has turned big and had some major consequences to where you think, hey, you honk at somebody, then they're getting out with road rage and either fighting or pull a gun or something like that. Hey, I got stopped because I didn't use my turn signal. This officer doesn't have anything better to do but stop people for this. Well, sorry, but 2 years ago, I had a situation to where, I'm just speaking in general now.
Yeah.
Hey, you might have had a cop that's been in a situation to where they had somebody die because somebody didn't do a simple, use a turn signal or something like that, and then it caused a major accident. And so you just see stuff that may shape why you do stuff.
Yeah.
Officers have their niches, and you think if you see a DUI and they killed somebody, then after you see some stuff like that, in your mind, you may be thinking, I don't want to see this happen again. So my big thing is I'm going to try to get drunks off the street or people without insurance or people that are speeding or something like that.
Yep. Totally makes sense. Man, so we've gone through a lot of stuff. There's another, again, like I said, the school resource topic that I want to go through, but that's for another episode. What else? Anything else you, as far as, policing goes and humanizing the badge and that kind of thing, that you wish we would have asked?
There's a lot of misunderstandings. I think, again, when I say the two sides, that I even prior to me becoming a police officer, I don't think I knew. Simple stuff. I get complaints where, hey, I had one complaint. 4 officers, came to the traffic stop. I'm not dangerous and whatnot, so why would it take 4 officers to come there? So after looking into it, it was simple. So first thing that people don't understand, traffic stops are one of the most dangerous things you can do as an officer. You don't know who you're stopping.
Yeah.
You think even if you're going out of town on the interstate, people drug trafficking, people wanted for murder or other serious crimes that haven't been caught. And so you don't know who you're running into. And there are people that flat out state, hey, next cop that stops me, I'm killing.
Yeah.
So that's one of the most dangerous things you can do. So when we stop a car, first, as a police officer, we don't all get along, but I don't care if I get along with them, don't. If I hear somebody calling out a traffic stop, I'm automatically headed that way because I want to make sure that they're okay. And that's no different than any other human. When I talk to these kids, I'm like, hey, if you got challenged to a fight and they said, meet me at a park, I said, would you go by yourself? They're like, no. I said, well, why not? Well, because I don't know who they're bringing. They could get jumped. They could have a weapon.
Yeah.
I said, it's no different being a police officer,
You bring a friend.
Bring your
Buddy.
friend. Numbers are better.
Yep.
The more numbers,
Yep.
the less likely people are going to try to do something. But in this particular incident where this person had been stopped, it was actually simple. One cop was in training and had their training officer with them. So when you're in training, you still have to act and do stuff like if you're solo. So if they notice something out of the ordinary or think, hey, this may be suspicious, you need to call for a second unit. So the officer called for a second unit like they were supposed to. The second unit, that officer was also in training and had a training officer. So then you get 4 police officers. So on our end, they did what they were supposed to do. But on the other end, they felt, hey, it's only me. I'm not a threat.
Yeah.
So both sides have to be understanding. The person driving the car, the citizen, has to understand, like, hey, they don't know you. They don't know that you're necessarily not a threat or whatnot. They're just stopping you. But then on the flip side, you don't understand why they're doing the things that they're doing. And they had no clue that, hey, these people were in training. And so
I could see that both ways, man. I get pulled over and boom, and 5 minutes there's 4 cops. I'm like, what the hell?
And it's
I haven't done anything.
And it's really pretty basic, when you play it out like that. When you think about it, it's anything in life. It's the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated.
Yep.
Do unto others the way you want done unto you. That individual that gets pulled over and doesn't like the situation or whatever else, just think about it. Think about it with an open mind.
Yeah.
Because there's things going on that you don't understand.
Yeah.
correct.
And it's the same thing for the police officer. There's things going on with that individual that you are, having a touch with that are going on that you don't know about.
Correct.
Treat them the way you want to be treated. And really, when it comes down to it, that's all we need to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it kind of fixes things.
Treat people like people.
Yeah. And that's on both sides.
100%.
And that's on the officer side too.
Yes.
Is it sucks dealing with people all the time in a negative light. And that can put you in a certain mood.
Yeah.
But you have to realize that, just because you interact with somebody else, you can't take that out on them. And officers need to check their attitudes, treat people nice, but it goes back. It's two-sided.
Yeah.
And we're still human.
Right.
I remember one call I went on to where I we got called. Family found this guy not breathing. So it was the wife, kids. I get there, do CPR, and I tell people, if you've never done CPR and only done it on a dummy, two completely different things. When you can hear ribs cracking and the family's running around hysterical behind me and you're trying to save this person because that's their loved one, and the guy ended up dying. But when I got out of the house afterwards, it's not, I just had a guy die on me, and it isn't, hey, I'm going to go home and chill. It's, no, you do a report and you go on to the next call. And so the next call after that I had gone on was a person complaining that their neighbor had been parked facing the wrong direction. And so when I got there, you could see it on my face. Like, this is
really?
Pointless.
Come on now.
Your perspective,
And they thought I was probably the biggest ass ever.
Probably, but someone just died.
Yeah. Correct. But they don't know that.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's why we really need to, if I stop somebody and they have an attitude, I don't know why. Mm-hmm. So I have to be mindful of that and realize, or they may just not like cops.
Yeah.
Because we shouldn't generalize, but again, human nature, people do. Mm-hmm. If somebody gets stopped by 4 cops and all 4 cops have been jerks to them, their perception of police isn't going to be too good. Mm-hmm. So I have to be able to understand that.
Yeah.
And then hopefully maybe I'm the one that can kind of change that because I give them some grace.
Yep.
Like, hey, sorry your interactions with those police officers have been bad. That's not me. You know, I'm going to treat you with respect.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, what else? You guys got any questions?
No, I was just going to poke fun at, I think another thing that might skew our perception of cops is watching too many Spike Lee movies.
Do you, speaking of that, we talk about movies here and there. Do you like cop movies, or is it weird to you?
Can't stand them. No, I'm not going to say all movies. I don't mind some cop movies, but I don't watch cops. I don't like watching really police shows.
Yes.
I want to turn it off. So when I'm outside of work, if I can, given my job now, I can't as much. Because I have to either be by my phone if somebody calls or whatever. But I don't like watching cop shows. I don't like talking about police stuff and telling stories.
Like, you do it enough. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's work. Leave it at work. It shouldn't be entertainment, but
yes.
Yeah.
I like keeping it separate.
So you're not coming home sharing like a bunch of stories. I mean, how is that interaction with you and your wife? Does she ask many questions? Does she want to know tons?
She used to.
Okay.
But it took some time.
Yeah.
And she understands me to where if I'm involved in something and I know it's going to be on the news, I want to tell her prior to her seeing it on the news. But outside of that, we really don't talk about it.
Yeah. I can respect that. I mean, it's a totally different level, but him being on the fire rescue out here, there's many times I don't even ask. I don't want to know. He just respectfully heading to a call, going to a fire call, just a text, like. But some once in a while I'll ask, and I don't know. So it's just interesting how some people want. I mean, I feel like, though, I remember being younger and our kids being younger and wanting to ask his dad a bunch of, so wouldn't you do this? Did you chase this person down? Because they want to hear the stories, and I remember thinking I wanted to too. But now being in it in a different sense, I don't ask a ton of questions, just, respectfully, knowing you guys are going through it. But do you get your kids asking stuff? Or not really?
They don't really ask a ton.
Okay.
Occasionally, I'll share something.
Okay.
Mainly as a learning experience to tell them stories, because I'm very open with my girls and don't want to hide stuff from them. So I'll tell them some stuff as a learning experience. But... we don't talk about a ton of stuff. I don't want them thinking, because my dad's a cop, that, you're going to be able to get out of stuff, because I would turn them in. Like, if they're doing something wrong, drugs or whatever, like, no, we're not having that in this house. So you need to go out. You need to be well-behaved, respectful of all, but also you need to make your own life. And you're not going to be using me to say, my dad's this, and so I can do this that I want. No, it's not happening.
My last name is this, or
Just like my parents taught me, when you walk out of this house, you're a reflection of us. And what you do, is going to either negatively or positively impact us. And that's important. And you better carry it and act like you got some sense.
Yeah, there you go.
100%.
There you go.
Man, I really appreciate it. This was, everything that I hoped it would be in terms of the story that we're telling to folks, the perspective they're getting, the background, like I said, the humanizing the badge. I didn't invent that. There's people out there doing that, and we're just trying to do our part as well. So thank you so much, man. Thank you for coming. Thank you for everything that you do. This has been very entertaining and enlightening.
Yeah.
I appreciate you having me.
This is
Yeah,
great.
That's a good one.
Yep.
All
Anything
right.
else, guys?
No.
All right. Lieutenant Howard Banks, we appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes,
We're going
thank
to
you.
close it out.
All right.
All right.
Peace.
Later.